In this and the next few lessons, we'll continue working with walls with more of a focus on the layout of an actual building space. Using various wall techniques and options, we'll lay out a simple 2-bedroom condominium unit. In this movie, we'll focus on sketching out basic wall locations and then adjusting those locations with accuracy. So to get started, I have a really simple file here on screen. This is called Locating Walls. So there's also a PDF illustration in the folder that shows the completed floor plan layout that you can use as a reference for working as we're going along. Let's start with the Wall tool on the Home tab. Now this time we want to actually choose a more specific type of wall. So for the interior partitions of this space, we're going to use a wall type called Interior 4 7/8 inch partition. Now we're choosing that off the Properties palette from the drop down at the top, and the drop down at the top is actually referred to as the type selector. So just for future reference, when I refer to the type selector, that's what I'm talking about. So we're going to go ahead and click Interior 4 7/8 inch partition. We're going to leave the location line set to wall center line, and the base constraint, of course, is level 1 because we're working on that level. And in this case, we want to make sure that the top constraint is going up to level 2. So we just want it to be a 1-story tall wall. And then we're going to come over here in the file, and we're going to keep this fairly simple. If you move your mouse around on screen, it'll pre-highlight existing walls, and in this case it pre-highlighted the center line of the existing wall, and it will give you a little temporary dimension. So you can get it close. I mean, the size of this dining room is supposed to be about 8'1", but don't try to be super precise yet. That's really not the point of the exercise. What we actually want to do is just get it close, and then we just kind of eyeball our 2 locations. Now again, that may seem a little strange. Eyeball, I mean, I thought we were using precision computer software here and we're supposed to be very accurate. Well, we are going to be very accurate, but we're going to do it in the Revit way. And what I mean by that is we generally come in here and we just lay out the overall layout that we're after. And you can see that I can do this fairly quickly if I'm not being overly concerned about precision. And I've just laid out this entire half of the floor plan by just doing a few simple clicks. Now I'm going to click the Modify tool or press Escape twice to reset and to cancel out of the command. And then I'm going to go in and select the walls that I've drawn, and I'm going to use the temporary dimensions to move them with accuracy. So the quote-unquote Revit way of laying out geometry is you typically lay it out generically first, and then you come back and you modify it using the temporary dimensions. Now we saw an example of this with grids in the Grids movie, but let's go ahead and repeat it now. If you don't know the center to center distance that you want those 2 walls to be, and it would be a little difficult to calculate in this point given the 7/8 of an inch, because that would make the math a little more challenging. Really, it would be easier if we had the face-to-face dimension. Well, remember that we can click these small little grips, and each time you click it, it will toggle from face to center to face of the wall. And so I can do that on both sides, and that will give me a dimension across here from this face to this face. And I want to point something out here. If you've used any version of Revit before and you clicked away right now from the wall, it would forget that you had made that modification. But here in 2011, if I select the wall, you'll see that it remembers that I've moved those witness lines to the inside faces. So that's definitely a welcome change in this release. I'm going to go ahead here and click on that dimension, and I'm going to type in 8'1". Now remember, if you want both feet and inches, simply type the feet followed by a space and then the inches, and I'm going to press enter. And notice that the wall will move to the new location, and it's now exactly at the precise dimension that I need it to be. Now this wall, I need a face-to-face dimension of 10 feet. So again, I could repeat the same process and get the dimension to the inside faces, click on here, and then here I just simply need to type 10, and it will move that wall. Now, very important, always select the item that you want to move. A lot of people make this next mistake. They now look at the walk-in closet over here in this location, and they say, well, this wall is not in the right location. I want to move it. And so they come over here to this dimension, and they begin typing in the number. And the problem with doing that is, notice how that moves the previous wall again. So the wall that's selected is the wall that's going to move, and that can be very frustrating until you get the hang of it. So remember, you need to select the item first, then edit the dimension. So if I select this wall, and I edit the witness lines, and then click the number, it will move the wall. Now, As easy as that is to do, you're probably feeling like it's getting a little tedious to do all this clicking of witness lines. So let me actually speed that up a little bit for you by talking about temporary dimensions and temporary dimension settings. So let's go over to the Manage tab, and on the Additional Settings drop-down button, we're going to go all the way down to the bottom here and choose the Temporary Dimensions dialog. The Temporary Dimensions dialog will appear, and it has a variety of settings in here. And to actually illustrate what each of these does, I have another file that I have open in the background. So what I'm going to do is cancel out of here temporarily. And I want to show you how you can switch between open files. So if you have more than one file open, this little icon here on the QAT, or the Quick Access Toolbar, will be available. And if you click on it, it will show you the other open documents that you have on screen. And I have another one called Temporary Dimensions, which is in the Chapter 4 exercise files. And here's an illustration that pretty much shows all of the options that are available in Temporary Dimensions. So we can either set it to its default, which is over here on the left, where it goes to the centers of the walls, or we can tell it to go to the faces of the walls. We can also tell it to go to the face of the core on the interior or the face of the core on the exterior. Now, when it comes to doors and windows, we also have a setting there. The default is this one over here, where it goes to the center line of the door. On this side, we have my preferred option, where it actually goes to the opening of the door. I find that I more often want to click on my door and edit this value to relocate the door than I do clicking over here and knowing what it is to the center line of the door. So either method will work, but if you want to actually place the dimensions of the walls like we're doing in the other file, so if I switch back over here, really the optimal settings for temporary dimensions ought to be this. We're going to go to the faces of the walls, and we're going to go to the openings of doors and windows. And when we choose that, it's going to make it much easier now for us to be able to select walls and come in here and click and actually change the dimension to the size that it ought to be. So again, I can click on here. You can see it already goes to face now. And so now it's very easy for me to come in here and type in the exact size that that closet ought to be. So this is going to move much more quickly than what we were doing a moment ago, because I don't have to stop and edit the witness lines after each click. So I highly recommend that you make those changes to your temporary dimension settings, and you can see how much more quickly your work will progress here.